Hey guys, we're back with another video, and in this one we're going to be trying to figure out what is the most overstable mid-range in the disc golf market. And to do so, I got this big stack of mid-ranges here. I've got 9 of them, I believe, all from different manufacturers, and I don't have like a comprehensive, or I'm not going to be making a comprehensive list. I'm missing certain discs like the Discmania MD5, discs from Lone Star, and other miscellaneous, even Clash discs and other miscellaneous manufacturers. But I basically took what I could find in my shop and figured I'd make a video on it for you guys. So before I start throwing them and figuring out which one's the most overstable, I'll go through each one, kind of give you a little breakdown of what they feel like, what they look like, and the flight numbers are and their profile. And then after I do that, we'll go throw. So first disc in the pile is the First Run Cardinal in the thermoplastic by Stokely Discs. So Scott Stokely actually came into my shop and I checked out some of his discs, since he's now disc golf manufacturer, and I picked up a handful of these Cardinals and of his Wrens. But I guess a little bit about the disc. This is definitely going to be the domiest of the bunch. Has a crazy pop top. I'm not sure if you could hear it, but insanely pop top. But it has the typical bottom of an overstable mid-range. The flight numbers are 5402.5. Should be pretty overstable, but I'm not thinking it's going to be. It might be the least overstable of the bunch, if I'm being honest, but still figured I might as well test it because some of you may have never seen a First Run Cardinal ever fly. So excited to try this one out. Next one is the AGL Hemp Plastic Beach. So this thing is board flat. This is the only base plastic disc that I'm testing in this review. So has the typical top of a overstable mid-range, but if you notice on the bottom, it has a double bead. So I'm not sure if you can see it in this video, but I'll zoom in on it in a closer up photo. It has like a bead and then a bead on top of it. Very unique. Never seen it on any other disc. The flight numbers are 5203. Kind of excited to try this one out. This one could definitely take the cake on most overstable. Next, we have the Infinite Discs. I'm not sure what plastic it is. I'll put it in the description, but it's the Raw. And flight numbers are 5402.5. Found this on my used rack and figured I might as well put it in. Looks exactly like a Rock 3. Maybe I'm wrong, actually. It maybe looks like a Rock X3. I'm not even sure, but it feels like one. Very wide. Yeah, should be. I'm definitely not expecting this one to be too overstable, but still might as well throw it just so you guys can have a feel for what it flies like. And yeah, I just saw it in the corner actually. It's the Metal Flake Sea Blend Raw. So excited to try that one out. Next, cool one, I got the Tour Series Z-Flex Swarm. Never thrown this thing. Feels really good in the hand. Super gummy. Profile looks very similar to your typical overstable disc. Very wide. And the flight numbers are 5304. I'm assuming it's going to be a few touches more overstable than a Buzz OS. And I've thrown a Z-Line Buzz OS and those are pretty overstable, but we'll see. I'm not sure. I feel like this one could be in the top 3 of the most overstable, but I guess we'll see. I'm not sure how much the Z-Flex will impact this disc, but we'll see. The next disc is the Lucid Justice. It's by Dynamic Discs. Flight numbers are 510.54. This disc is pretty crazy. Board flat, massive bead on the bottom. Feels overstable in the hand. Definitely feels like the most overstable disc of the bunch. Never thrown it before. I'm sure this can take the #1 spot very easily, but we will see. Excited to throw this one in the field. Moving on, we have the MVP deflector. Flight number is 3.504. The profile is very similar to the Justice, but it looks like the Justice just has a big bead on the bottom. So yeah, I'm assuming that this Justice is just gonna be a more overstable deflector, but I've heard that these deflectors are like total meat hooks, specifically by my buddy. And typically MVP is way more stable than the flight numbers indicate on most of their discs, so this could possibly beat the Justice somehow. Moving on, we have the Innova Star Gator. I don't think I've ever thrown one before. I think the flight number is 5204. It's a lot smaller in diameter compared to the other discs. Feels a lot more controllable, but still super overstable. I mean, the bead on the bottom of this thing is massive. So I guess we'll see how this flies. I think I've thrown one before. I've either thrown this or a Croc. And I just remember these things being absolute meat hooks. I think this was definitely more overstable than a Buzz OS. So we'll see how it matches up. Second to last, we have the DGA Quake. Thrown this thing a few times. This one's brand new, but it basically feels exactly like a Buzz OS. Yeah, feels like the same hand feel, same width. I'm not sure if, I don't have a Buzz OS on me, but it looks really similar too. I'm not sure if it's more concave here comparative to the Buzz OS, but feels exactly the same. I used to bag a Glow Quake, and that thing was super overstable, so we'll see how this Pro Line one is. And lastly, I have the Axiom Prism Proton Pyro. This thing's pretty beat up. I've bagged it for the last couple weeks. Definitely my favorite overstable mid-range right now. Based on how I know it flies, I don't think it definitely won't be the most overstable of the bunch, but I figured I might as well let you guys see how it flies. I'll still give kind of like a background of what I feel like is the best overstable mid-range on the market. So let's take all these discs, bring them out to the field. I'll see you guys out in the field. All right, guys, we're in the field now. Got our stack of discs. I'm gonna be going, like I said, throwing each of these flat out there, try to see how much it wants to dump to the left. And then after that, I'm gonna do a full distance comp, try to throw these as hard as I can on as much anhyzer as possible, see how much distance we can get, and determine which one is the most overstable. We'll start with Scott Stokely Thermo First Run Cardinal. First impression, disc flew basically dead straight, actually a little bit more straighter than my Pyro, so it's in contention for least stable. Second disc we're throwing is the AGL Beach in the Hemp Classic. Definitely not surprised with how overstable that disc was. Totally board flat on the top. Definitely in the running. But just to clarify, I'm also throwing all of these discs around 70-80%. I'm gonna try to keep it as consistent as possible, just so you guys know. All right, the next disc we're throwing is the Infinite Metal Flake Sea Blend Raw. These have the same flight numbers as the Scott Stokely, and this is the only used disc we're throwing, so might be a little straighter than expected. All right, well, that thing is easily the most understable disc of the bunch, I'm assuming. Probably because it's beat in a little bit, but that thing flew dead straight. But let's just move on to the next disc. We got the 2024 Z Flex Tour Series Swarm. See if it's more overstable than the Beach. Very similar. Yeah, that thing is definitely a meat hook. Gonna be a common term used in this video, but wanted just to go left straight out of my hand. Didn't even have a chance to go flat really for any distance, but let's see how this Dynamic Discs Lucid Justice flies. I'm assuming it's gonna fly the exact same, if not more overstable. All right, oddly enough, that Justice was actually a lot straighter than I expected. Definitely doesn't, it has very little glide, but definitely not one glide. So I think it's actually not gonna be the most overstable, but moving on to the next disc, got the Proton Deflector by MVP. Heard this thing's a meat hook. Definitely an overstable disc. Let's move on to the Innova Star Gator. See how it flies. All right, we got 2 more discs to go. Second to last, penultimate, DGA Quake Pro Line. See how she flies. I threw that one on a little bit of anhyzer, but that thing definitely has a lot more glide than I expected. Definitely not going to be the most overstable based on the first throw. Let's get into the last disc, which is my own Prism Proton Pyro. You just get a feel for how she flies. Definitely going to be on the straighter side. I'm expecting it to fly exactly like that Scott Stokely Cardinal, but probably just a little bit more overstable. But see for yourself. I threw that on a little bit of hyzer, but still wanted to push a lot straighter than usual. Let's go collect the discs and then test their max distance. All right, we collected all the discs, and these 5 were definitely the most overstable. They're all pretty much collected in the same grouping. So the AGL Beach, MVP Deflector, Dynamic Discs Lucid Justice, Star Gator, and the Z Flex Swarm. So all the other discs, the Pyro, Raw, well definitely the Raw, the Cardinal, and the Quake were easily 30-40 feet further. Also important to note that on this max distance comp, I'm going to try to be throwing it at the same angle, same height, but I'm only human, so mistakes are bound to happen, but try to keep it as consistent as possible. Yeah, but let's get to throwing now. after throwing those about 90% power, narrowed it down to 3 discs. First one, AGL Beach hemp plastic. Second one, the Swarm. And the last one is the Proton Deflector. So, gonna throw those on a bunch of Annie now. Try to throw it about similar power, see how much they fight back and see how far they go. Try to keep it the same angle, same height, but you know, I'm an AM player, so see how it goes. First up, AGL Beach. Next up, Proton Deflector. That was a little bit lower, more penetrating, probably lower nose angle, but move on to the last one, Swarm. All right, guys, finished throwing all the discs. Now it's time to rank them, least to most overstable, bottom up. Start with number 9. It is the Infinite Discs Raw. So it's a little unfair because this is the only disc that was used, so it could be beat in a good amount. But basically threw it flat, didn't even really want to come out till maybe the very end of its flight. Kind of flew very neutral. A newer one probably flies similar to maybe like the Scott Stokely Cardinal, but as for now, this was the 9th most overstable, so it's bottom of the list. For the next disc, 8th on the list, surprisingly, is the Proline Quake. I used to have a Proto Quake before, and that thing was a meat hook, but surprisingly, this thing was really straight. It was surprisingly really straight. Numbers indicate 5303, but it probably flies a little straighter than that. I've thrown a Buzz OS, which feels similar, and the numbers are 5402. I'd say that's probably a little bit more accurate for this disc. Has a lot of glide, went really far, but still had that reliable fade at the end. Definitely will never turn over on you, but that's number 8 on the list. 7th disc on the list, we're now going with the Prism Proton Pyro. Disc I bag, used it only for a couple weeks though, so basically brand new. Flies a lot like the Quake. I could push it straighter than the Quake on max power, but it seemed like when I was a little slower speed that the Quake would want to dump a little bit, or that the Pyro would want to dump a little bit more quicker than the Quake, and so that's why I'm ranking it 7th. Really usable mid-range, very comparable to this Proline Quake. If you want a disc that's overstable but still like manipulative, you could put it on an angle and have a nice S-curve, recommend the Quake or the Pyro. Moving on to number 6, we have the Scott Stokely Cardinal. First time ever throwing this disc. Really wanted to push straight, but then kind of like dump a little bit at the end. I think it wants to push straight because of this dome. Makes it want to like stay upright for a little bit longer, and then when it hits that angle, kind of just like started fading gradually to the left. All that makes it seem like it's understable, but it doesn't really have the glide, I would say. I would say it probably has like 3.5 glide, comparable to the Pyro. But everything else is basically spot on. When I threw it lightly and wanted to dump a little bit more, it seemed like, so that's why I'm putting the Scott Stokely Cardinal 6th on my list. Getting into the top 5, 5th most overstable is the Star Gator. Surprisingly, when I threw this thing like at 70-80%, I was like, man, this actually could be a contender to win. But when I pumped it out there 100%, I tried to throw it flat. I might have shanked it a little bit to the right, but it really had that glide and wanted to push a lot straighter than all the other discs. The flight number is 5204. I would say that's a little inaccurate in comparison to all the other overstable mid-ranges. It probably flies like 5303, exactly what the quake numbers are and what a quake probably should fly like. Kind of glide, has a lot of glide, push straight, but then dumped at the end. If you're looking for quake numbers, I would suggest a Stargator. Going to fourth on my list, surprisingly, I have the Lucid Justice. With the flight numbers 5.1, positive 0.54, I was expecting this thing to take it down, but just really wasn't that overstable. I could push it flat pretty far and have it go straight and then dump to the left. Definitely more overstable than all the other discs I've just talked about, but the numbers are just simply not right. I shouldn't say that, but the numbers are simply not accurate. I feel like if some intermediate beginner were to walk into the store, look at this disc, they'd be like, I'm never ever throwing this disc. Even for regular guys, advanced, intermediate, even professional players, they probably look at this disc and be like, I'm never gonna use it. But surprisingly, it's not that overstable. I mean, one glide is definitely inaccurate. It probably flies more like 2 to 3 glide. I would say the turn is more like 0, and the fade of 4 is probably accurate, maybe 3.5, 4. But I know dynamic discs, I've heard at least, run their numbers a little bit more overstable than usual. But this disc, off the podium, 4th place, pretty good disc. If you're looking for something that's still overstable, but you can still push a little straight, definitely use Justice. All right, into our podium positions. This is the top 3 most overstable discs on the market, or that I have essentially. And 3rd place is the Proton Deflector. Really surprising. Funny enough, this one has the most glide out of the top 6, or out of the top 5, but it really felt like it didn't want to glide. I would say the numbers though are the most accurate out of all the discs so far. 5, 3.5, 0, 4. I would say, yeah, if you put it on Anheuser, it really didn't like fight out a ton. It wanted just to fight out to flat for a brief second, then fade. So if anything, the only number that's off is the 3.5 glide. Could probably be dropped to 3, if not 2.5. But still flew pretty far. Threw it about like 320 on that max distance Annie. So still very usable, but not the most overstable. Second on the list, between these two guys, the second most overstable disc between these two is the Andrew Presnell Swarm. I would say these numbers are spot on. 5304, flew exactly like it. Didn't want to stay in the air too long. I would throw it on Annie and it would fight out immediately to hyzer out. Really overstable, very reliable. Definitely going to be a dependable wind fighter for anybody that buys one of these. Just does not want to turn over. If you're looking for an approach disc that is just super stable, you could put it on spike hyzers, put it on hyzers, put it flat, put it on Annie and have it finish to the left. This is the disc for you. Definitely super overstable, but still usable to a certain extent. But yeah, congrats to Discraft making the second most overstable disc on this list. Pretty impressive. Get yourself a Discraft Swarm. But the disc that takes the cake is the AGL Beach. This disc flies pretty true to its flight numbers. This thing, 5203, does not want to stay in the air at all. 2 glide is pretty accurate. Could be dropped to 1 glide. Could be a little bit more overstable. Maybe it could be 4 fade, but this disc flew shorter than 2nd and 3rd place by 15 feet. You could just tell, even though I didn't throw it perfectly, it really just did not want to stay in the air. I think I threw this max distance like 270 feet. It felt like similar to a Zone OS where the harder you throw it, the more stable it wants to be. It just wants to fight out the more spin you put on it. And so that's why it's taking the #1 spot. So congratulations to AGL. Well-deserved disc, true to its flight numbers. The double bead on the bottom definitely probably makes that difference to make it a super meat hook. You get the certified meat hook award for this disc. Congratulations. Before I finish the video, I wanted to talk about flight numbers. So as you can tell, the flight numbers between manufacturers and even for individual discs aren't really too accurate. So first off, flight numbers should be universal, should be transferable from manufacturer to manufacturer. I get that it's a form of advertisement for them to try to sell different discs just because the numbers portray what the disc may fly like, so people get interested, but not sure if they'll ever do that. And the second thing before I end the video is to not let flight numbers scare you at all. Obviously, if I were to look at this Justice 5.1 0.54, I would probably never pick it up. I'd be like, man, this thing is the biggest meat hook ever. Why would I ever throw it? Feels like an absolute meat hook. So I was like, there's no way this thing's gonna be usable. It's probably gonna take it down, but it pushed a lot straighter. It didn't even make the podium. So when you're looking for discs, not just overstable mid-ranges, make sure to try different things out if things aren't working for you. Just look at this Quake 5303, flew way straighter than I thought. So I guess the key takeaway is don't let flight numbers influence you to necessarily not try or to try a disc. Just let the disc speak for itself. Try new things, don't be afraid. But yeah, that concludes my video. Thanks guys for watching. Really appreciate it. Our channel has been doing super well. If you guys could just like and subscribe, do the usual, comment down below a disc that may be more overstable, a mid-range that could be more overstable. I'm not sure if that Discmania MD5 could be more overstable than these, but yeah, I appreciate all your guys' support. Hopefully I'll be coming out with some more videos pretty soon. You could even comment down below what type of video you want me to come out with. I'm open to try different things, but until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.